Welcome to today's look at what the future holds for community banking. I'm Al Dominic, the CEO, Bank Director in Finex Tech, and I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. this afternoon. Joining me with her crystal ball from Milwaukee, Wisconsin is Maria Schuld with FIS. FIS being one of the true leaders in the technology and services space that helps businesses and communities thrive by advancing commerce in the financial world. As the two of us look ahead, I really do appreciate Maria being in a position to draw on FIS's continued focus on driving growth for its clients. They do so by creating tomorrow's technologies, solutions, and services in a way that modernizes today's businesses and customer experiences. For most of us, FIS needs little introduction, especially for those joining us from around the U.S., but it's worth noting that the company leverages its scale, industry expertise, and data-driven insights really to advance the way that the world pays, banks, and invests. So as a company that I run connects key decision makers at key moments around key strategic issues, I'm really looking forward to exploring what's on our collective road ahead based on what FIS sees and senses as much as what we are hearing from bank CEOs, chairmen, and leadership teams. Now, before we get started, I have just 3 things to help your viewing experience become a good one. First off, you've all joined in listen-only mode. So you can say whatever you want, and don't worry, you've been automatically muted. For a better viewing experience, we'd recommend that you click on the slide bar at the bottom of the screen to put the presenters into full screen mode. But if you choose not to, and you just want to listen, that's totally cool by us as well. I'm a big note taker. Just to show you that I'm not making this up, I got my notepad and pen right here. If you want to take copious notes, please do so. If you don't, that's also your prerogative. This is a presentation that will be shared electronically with all who registered within 24 hours of this being complete. We'll send that out by email, and we'll also make it available on bankdirector.com. I'm going to give you a bonus point. I just was thinking about this. If you want to ask a question, obviously you can't just shout it out, but you can write it in by clicking on the Q&A button on the right side of your screen. So I think I have to give a nod of appreciation to our legal team and make sure that I say the opinions expressed in this webinar are those just of the individual speakers and do not represent necessarily the opinions of other speakers or entities with which the speakers are associated. So lawyers, I hope I said that right. All right, so I mentioned that this is going to be a conversation with Maria Schuld. Let me ask her to turn on her camera and microphone. And while she does, it's worth me noting that she's the Senior Vice President and Division Executive of FIS, where she's responsible for core and digital banking for community and regional clients. So I'm excited just to get her ideas really as it surrounds product development, account management, professional services, and really what the future holds. So Maria, are you ready for this?
Hi, Al. I am very ready. Thanks so much for having me this afternoon.
All right, so I'm going to give you the toughest question of the day, and that's, you got your crystal ball, and I know you're in Milwaukee, so should we be fearing the deer, and should our friends in Atlanta who are watching think that the NBA playoffs is over?
Boy, that is going to be the toughest question today. I am sitting here in Milwaukee, and we love our Bucks, so I have to say go deer.
Okay, so just put it out there. All you Hawks fans, don't throw any shade at us. We just have to, put that out that, this series could be over, but I guess that's why we watch. Anyway, there's this great game afoot in the financial world, and this is a term coined by my good longtime colleague Jack Milligan, who many people know has been writing for Bank Director magazine for years. The great game in his mind is bank M&A, and I think we've got to acknowledge where we're coming from if we're going to really try to look ahead to what might be coming up. And so since I'd say 2006, we've seen bank M&A really reshape the industry we're a part of. We're also seeing a number of external forces and factors provoke change across the sector that we all, know and love so much. So, Maria, maybe the best way for me to actually really ask you a question is to set the scene a little bit here. Where do you think the status quo is for banks at the moment, and what's your experience with some of the key issues that community bankers are trying to overcome?
Sure. No, boy, that's a great question, and I think an important one, really, Al, as we do, set the stage. Our community bankers, our regional bankers, have been really a trusted entity to their customers for a very long time, right? That's a very important role that they play, different from some of the global providers. And certainly we've seen a lot of that as they responded during the payroll protection program loans, right? We saw a tremendous amount of penetration, especially in the community and regional bankers, to be able to respond to this. Over the 15 months or so, certainly, of this pandemic, they've faced a lot of unique challenges that we haven't really always had an opportunity to take advantage of the relationship side of things that we have used in this sector of the banking space, really as a paramount of the success and trust that our customers put in us. So I think that we've really seen our bankers understand, they always have really, but over this last 15 months, the criticality of technology, digital transformation, all those investments that have been made that maybe at times were a little bit harder to show an ROI on, now have a level of criticality and importance. I think that's really changing the landscape, and certainly I think driving a little bit of even the M&A that you talked about is how do I have a stronger footprint? How do I bring more of that digital transformation to play? So I think those are really some of the challenges of in today's industry, maybe even a little bit more acute than what we would have experienced pre-pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me personally, I've been with Bank Director since I think September of 2010. And if we were to roll back the tape to then and start talking technology at the level that we are at the moment, people would kind of look sideways at you because, the bread and butter of banking was, I think, pretty well understood. But then, you see the effects of 2008, the financial collapse and crisis, lack of confidence in kind of banks and Wall Street and everything getting lumped together. It precipitated the rise of fintech. And I think we're living in that period right now. You talk about the triple P rollout, as we affectionately call it within Bank Director. I think that's really allowed people to understand that the transformation taking place when we talk digital, technology is a great tool and it's a great way to improve your infrastructure, but it's organizational, it's cultural. There's some, I think, pretty fundamental business shifts taking place right now. And I'd like to ask, I know you've been doing some research. FIS has at least commissioned and conducted some research with its clients and others to better understand what's taking place in the world at the moment. Can you maybe talk to me a little bit about the research that you're doing, then talk a little bit about the studies themselves and some of the areas that you've been delving into?
Sure. Yeah. So we completed some very, very interesting research earlier this year in the February timeframe. We actually wanted to really understand, going back to consumers, what the impact of COVID was having on their banking patterns and banking relationships. And so we went out and we surveyed about 1,000 Americans about their banking patterns during this time. And there really were some very interesting and I think potentially surprising responses that we got back. One of them in particular, I think that was really important to me, was that 1 in 5 people actually changed their banking provider during the last 12 months. And, I think as we all went through this time, to embark on a tremendous amount of change was really taking on a lot when you consider we were, in lockdown for a period of time and limited contact and limited abilities to interact, that 1 in 5 consumers actually did choose to change their banking relationship. So that was certainly very, very important. The other thing that was, I think, really critical was that the large nationals and global banks were actually ranked a little higher as these consumers' choice. And certainly, being someone who works every day with community and regional bankers, that was an important element to me, was how do I help with that? Because certainly we want to continue to make sure that our community and regional bankers have a place. So that was a piece of information too. And why did the people change? Or that's the other side of it is, as you have your notes, I want to make sure I get my stats right too. 33% of those who joined the new bank, why did they do it? They were looking for better benefits, right? They were looking for higher savings yields. They were looking for potentially better rewards. And we did have some group of clients who, of survey respondents who said they changed because of COVID benefits. So you talk about Triple P, and the criticality of Triple P was, so there was a number of people who said, I'm going to change because I have a bank who's better able to respond to me, especially during Triple P. And I think a lot of our customers shared that same feedback, was this opportunity to take that single transaction and turn it into a relationship. But certainly those were some of the, I think, really interesting pieces of feedback about just things that have changed in the last 12 months during this time.
Yeah, and what's interesting is both an individual who has been loyal almost to a fault to their bank. In full disclosure, I use USAA, and I know USAA has great customer loyalty, but you start at some point you do think, should I be sticking with this institution? And you start to think about the tools and the product sets that are put out. It strikes me that and I'd be curious your thoughts, because you're talking about 1 in 5 consumers changing. Do you see what happened with the small and mid-sized businesses as they were applying for the SBA program? Do you see some of that bigger bank behavior starting to come down to the regional and community banks, where people felt a better sense of camaraderie? Because there were, as banks get larger and they seek scale, sometimes they lose the relationships that made them successful in the first place. And I'm curious, did you see any correlation between business activity and consumer activity, or are they unlinked?
Well, this particular study, we certainly focused really talking to the consumer side of things, but I'll share just what I've heard from some of my banking customers, some of the partners that we work with, is that they absolutely felt like they could work with a community or regional banker and truly get that loan over the finish line and help that small business to really succeed. So many of our community and regional bankers really being in their local area had that knowledge of who those bankers were, or who the businesses are, and how to effectively help them through that. So there was certainly a lot of feedback from our banking customers that they saw relationships change during this time as a result, right, of what was done on Triple P. Now, I will also say, though, that I think that many of our bankers, especially community bankers, saw this as an amazing opportunity. They saw the opportunity going in as a way to really bring some of that new business into the bank, and knew that if they could sell that, the trust that they would do what they said they were going to do, and the relationship building that comes from community and relation and regional bankers, they knew they could make that difference, and in fact were very positive in doing that.
Yeah, and so as you're talking, somebody is paying attention because they asked, of the 1 in 5 that chose to change their relationship, did they specifically cite the pandemic as the reason for that change?
Yes, some of them certainly did. Others were looking really for high yield savings instruments. But absolutely, there was a portion of the respondents who said, I'm moving because of COVID and the opportunity to gain the benefits of COVID.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking, I was reminded, one of my favorite experiences in my professional career was spending some time with Richard Davis when he was still the CEO of US Bank. And Richard said this publicly at a bank director conference, so I feel like I can paraphrase, but he reminded bankers that, in a sense, we're the canary in the coal mine. We're able to see and sense consumer shifts, economic trends, investment philosophies far faster than others because you're close to your customer. And so building on that concept of being the canary in the coal mine, are you seeing or sensing certain technologies that might have a real material impact on community banks starting to emerge?
Absolutely. This is so there are some great opportunities that all of our bankers have. And, as you talked, I was thinking about, I remind bankers all the time of the amount of data that they have available, and what they can really do with that data to personalize experiences for their consumers. So I would tell you that there's a couple things I think that are really critical right now from a technology perspective. One of them is really all about artificial intelligence and how we're using artificial intelligence to really leverage the data that we have about consumers and small businesses. And you can have two real benefits to that. There is certainly the efficiencies that can come back office, right? So we've done a lot of artificial intelligence bot work, robotics automation work to help our bankers to automate those functions that can be a little bit more routine. But the other side of it is you can really use that data to customize and personalize an approach to your customers. And there's an example, boy, where technology is helping to, I think, reinforce customer engagement. And we're all about customer engagement right now, right? Because we can't sit, or we're getting there, but we're not back quite yet to being able to sit face to face in a branch and open an account and form that relationship. So the more we can do through these types of technologies to build that customer engagement, I think is really going to be important to our community and regional bankers.
When you're talking AI, I've recently noticed a lot of people talking about its potential to augment the team, not replace the team.
Absolutely.
Is that a fair way of thinking about where we're moving? Because again, if we, I know we're trying to look forward, but we have to remember we're coming from a place where people talked about machine learning, artificial intelligence, the promise it has. If you search the Bank Director archives, there's a cover of the robots are coming, and there was a real concern that some of these, back office positions were going to be made redundant based on the technology, and that was in part why there was a little bit of apprehension to adopt what was commercially available. How is that shifted?
Completely agree, and I will tell you the messaging we certainly share, and what I hear from bankers as a response as well is robotics and process automation just really helps you take that very precious talent of people and align them with those types of activities where they can have the most benefit. We're really not seeing a lot of, to your point of let's reduce the back office by 20 or 30%, but let's figure out how we take that very precious back office resource and have them focused on the types of activities that truly are a value add to the consumer and to the bank versus those that really are a little bit more routine, and you can get a really consistent and predictable result through the use of automation. The really important point to really see the value in that, because I think it can sometimes get lost, and when we think about the bigger picture of just robotics as a way to remove resources versus really getting them allocated to the right types of activities.
Sure. To keep on the emerging technology, kind of front, this will maybe sound counterintuitive, but mobile banking still could be put into that category. And I realize that mobile banking is not a new concept, but I think the delivery of the experience and the way that people are able to really change their delivery methods to suit the needs of their customer continues to evolve. Is that what you're finding?
Absolutely. Mobile continues to be a strong and growing delivery channel. And especially during the pandemic, we saw our registrations for mobile banking break every record and increase dramatically during that time. And the other thing that's interesting about that, Al, is that we haven't seen those people step away from mobile. They may have come to mobile as a source of a check to see if my, economic impact payment had hit my account, right? That's really where I think the need started. And that's where we saw this tremendous amount of registration come, because you didn't have that predictable opportunity to go into the branch. And so I think that was certainly a catalyst to advancing mobile banking, but we really haven't seen that slow down during this time. In fact, what we've seen are bankers and their customers asking for ways to accomplish more via that mobile channel. And that's really where we've been focused as well, is how do we make that experience, certainly, things like, bringing faster payments and, even, honestly, contactless cards, which is still a card, but increasing and pushing people's acceptance of these technologies during this time has really advanced, I think, our industry and helped us to take some of these technologies that certainly were growing pre-pandemic, but have allowed us to see a level of adoption in our customers that we certainly would not have seen, I think, without the pandemic. It would have taken certainly a lot longer to get there.
Yeah. So again, in my experience, talking to different kind of, I'll call them frontline, decision makers when it comes to embracing technology, there's some common questions that don't yield common answers. It's a lot more nuanced, but how will I use this? Why will I use it? And where will I use this? And everyone has a variation of that formula. So I'm not trying to act like there's one size that fits all, but I'm curious when you think about these new emerging technologies and what it means for financial institutions and really companies in general. There's both opportunity, which we're starting to talk about, but there's also challenges. So as much as I love to be an optimist on things like this, I think we have to be, pragmatic and look at where people can get hung up on things. What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, if we use as an example just RPA, robotic process automation, as an up and coming important technology, if you think about how does that possibly work? You have to be strong on your process. You have to be strong on your principles, consistent in how you want to respond. So it's really forcing us to go back and look very strong at at how we're making those decisions, because if you think about the concept, right, it has to be a repeatable process. So I think that certainly, that there's an opportunity there to go back and look at those processes, but you've got to really understand how you want to deal with those, because what you've removed from this equation is a little opportunity for a human to interact and change an outcome. So that's what really important to figure out where you want to sit in there. Now, the other side of it is certainly a little bit different skill set resource needed in the bank to be able to respond to some of the needs associated with keeping those bots updated. And that's certainly an area that we've worked to try to be able to respond. The other thing I would certainly say is that I think there is always an opportunity, especially in the case of robotics, that we look at it from the perspective of, could there be, potentially a bias introduced, things along those lines. And I think our bankers are really very focused on that and very cautious. And even in terms of kind of how the government and regulators have looked at some of these emerging technologies, you've got to be sure that you're not introducing any biases or concerns. And so those are some of the things I think on the backside, certainly that to be addressed.
Well, and as you're talking about the biases that we all naturally bring, and how do you take a step back and say, let's make sure we're not. I think there's other issues that, again, I'm seeing at community banks across the country. They have an interest and an aspiration, for the most part, to do more. And so, again, I don't want to take a broad brush and act like every bank wants to change. But there are some really, well-performing, if not high-performing institutions that are not in the super regional category.
That's right.
That only have a few swings at the piñata, and they can't afford to miss. And so I'm looking at you to help me understand, how do you work with some of those companies that say, okay, we know where we are, we know where we want to be, but we've got to ask better questions, again, in a strategic sense, so that we know that we're actually asking the hard questions now, as opposed to having to answer a hard question later.
Absolutely. So I think there's a transformation plan, right, that we encourage every organization to really think about, as what are your goals, and what are you working to aspire to, and those are very important conversations, as in some cases I am a core provider, right, in the role that I play, or I could be a payments provider. But it's important for us to understand where that organization wants to go, what their goals are, so that we can really help to ensure that they are asking the right questions, and certainly we're providing enough of that information. In some cases, even having someone on your team within a bank that really has that digital transformation role, so that it is not something that kind of becomes side of desk, because I think that can at times happen in an organization. So we are seeing much more of an emergence of this transformational chief transformation officer, as an example, or digital transformation officer, which I think is a very critical role that's emerging in a lot of our banking partners to ensure that that transformation, right, really becomes part of the strategic plan for the organization. I would also tell you that, I would encourage all of our banking partners, make sure your fintech vendors, right, your partners in fintech understand what that strategy is, because the best conversations I get to have with our customers are them sharing strategy, me sharing strategy, and really finding out where we can benefit each other, or we can modify potentially timelines or priorities to be able to effectively address it. So I think it's really about that relationship with your technology partners, and how you can advance that and push it forward.
And so think about the partner mindset and model. One of the gaps I think exists right now is you have a chief technology officer, you have a chief information officer, but you don't necessarily have a chief digital officer.
Correct.
And if you're thinking about transformation, you also, at the board level, don't see a lot of tech committees outside of the regional players on up. Seems to me that that's an area of opportunity. So yes, it might be a immediate risk, but if you can start to bring in some of this mindset that understands change and can look at process improvement, or an iterative approach to technology development, you're going to be one step closer to what you want to be than where you are right now. Are you sensing that as well, or is that just me kind of drinking a little bit of Kool-Aid?
No, I agree with you, and maybe one of the examples where we are seeing more organizations step into that is really in the interest of APIs, as an example, because I think that there was a point in time where you were only talking potentially to the largest organizations who wanted to take on that niche, potentially a niche provider, or using an APIs to get access to a particular piece of data to provide a particular function. And I would tell you that I am absolutely seeing that come down, certainly very strongly in the regional banks, and even more so in the community banks, where they're forming a plan, to your point, a digital first, right? That is absolutely what I'm hearing across the board, is everyone recognizes digital first, but really understanding how they can potentially use APIs and use this kind of open banking concept to really further that technology plan faster, and that need to really to push it forward. So absolutely, I think the usage of APIs and how that's really becoming mainstream in all banking partners is a great example of what you described.
Yeah, and this goes hand in hand with being kind of in hibernation for the last year and a half as a country, because we've all been on phones, we've all been on screens, our devices seem to know what we're doing, whether it's Netflix suggesting a new show that I didn't know that I was going to love, or the home workout stuff that's got the embedded applications within them. I think the expectation is changing, and I want to use this as a point to go towards cryptocurrency, because when you're talking about people getting their $400 or $1,000 or however much their stimulus check was, it strikes me that some people were using that in speculative ways, not necessarily in just paying the bills way. Crypto is not a new concept, but certainly it's gained a lot of visibility over the past year and a half. And if even you go onto Coinbase and you look at the volatility measures of Bitcoin and Ethereum alone, you would say there's some heavy volume and some big trades and some big players that are getting involved. Talk a little bit, because I know you're doing some kind of cool stuff on the crypto front. What should community and regional bankers be thinking about on this count?
Yeah, so this has been a very interesting and exciting time for us to start looking at the opportunity for cryptocurrency. So we did just recently made an announcement of an investment and a partnership with NYDIG. to really bring cryptocurrency buy, sell, hold opportunities, particularly to our community regional banks is where we're focusing. And so we did this for a very specific reason, is we were hearing from our bankers that there certainly was an interest, number one. Number two, they were getting interest from their consumers, and certainly seeing money coming out of the bank, right? So money leaving the bank, being invested, to your point, in cryptocurrency. And we are all looking for ways to keep customers, keep share of wallet, keep our customers really in the bank. So this is so we looked at it really to go out and find a partner that we felt brought the right amount of expertise in this, and NYDIG was certainly our choice to do that. But this is a great opportunity. We've had a tremendous amount of interest with our bankers around, this whole. We're going to start with buy, sell, hold, because we felt that this was a great opportunity for our bankers to offer these capabilities to their consumers and keep the money really in the bank, which is certainly very, very important. Your comments about cryptocurrency, I think, are really interesting, because what we saw is certainly a lot in the millennial space, right? The demographic of consumers that all of our bankers are working hard to bring into the banking fold, get that first relationship to be able to maintain that level of banking relationship, and certainly crypto is a place that's of interest, and it's a strong motivator and investment vehicle for that demographic. So it's just been a great. We've had a great response. Certainly from our customers. Now, going back to the mobile story, right? That's the way you've got to deliver this information. That's our focus is to integrate this with our mobile offering, so that we can give all that via that immediate gratification mobile offering to all of our consumers.
Yeah, and this is like a personal thing. I've been really interested in the underlying blockchain technology for years, and I think what's happening with these different coins. It's worth exploring, whether you want to believe in it or not. And I've talked to some CEOs who are saying, I'm adamantly against this whole thing. It's a house of cards. I don't believe in it. And you know what? I don't want to try to push you to say you're wrong. I also don't want to say you're right. I think you've got to be able to participate and look at how the market moves, who's investing where. Just yesterday, I think the head of Mexico's largest bank said, I really support Bitcoin. And that was something that made either the front page of the Wall Street Journal or like somehow the digital front page. When people think about cryptocurrency, here's like a quick hack that I was given. You want to think about Bitcoin, it's like you're going out to mine for gold. You're just going in, you're sifting for gold, and you think you're going to get it. Ethereum, which is the second most popular cryptocurrency, is like you're looking for gas or oil, because it's something that allows for things to take place. They're two totally different currencies, yet they get put together because they're crypto and people don't necessarily understand the differences. And I feel like sometimes we get so ahead of ourselves with the excitement of an opportunity that we forget that, if you want to be panning for gold, that's one thing that you can do, but it's going to take time, and there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of downside. Same thing with Ethereum. But that's something totally different. That's all about smart contracting and identity and things that banks might care a little bit more about. Having the ability to go to your customers who care about this stuff and don't want to go to a Robinhood or some other app that may not work for them, it seems to be good business. But again, it's something that I think has to be discussed. Much like when you were talking about APIs, I almost want to return to that for a second, because I'm not sure how well known APIs are. Like here we're talking about cryptocurrency, which is like a kind of weird, chemistry experiment for some people. Do you mind if we take a step back and talk APIs just for a second? And the potential of A, what does API stand for? But B,
sure.
Why do people get excited about their potential?
So one quick thing on crypto that I think is important, and love to talk about APIs, is I think that by choosing a partner, FIS, leverage their investment, choosing a partner, NYDIG, right? Our goal in that was to get rid of some of that risk that you just talked about, right? Is to bring a level of investment, and a level of knowledge and understanding to certainly help bankers to get over that first step of risk. So just wanted to, because I think that that's an important point, but yet, no, I love to talk about APIs, right? So APIs are, they are sets of they're tools, right? Think of them as a standard set of instructions that allow you to reach into systems and get data and go do something with it, right? I think that's probably a real basic way to look at APIs, right? They're application programming interfaces, right? They allow you to be able to go in and truly in a very consistent, repeatable format, gain data from your core systems, as an example, to be able to effectively display in a digital solution or a mobile solution, or pull data that allows you to be able to then create a personalized experience for your consumer. So the tremendous amount of power in this concept of open banking and allowing access to the data via these APIs.
Well, and I realize for some people that goes through an open door, and I am not trying to restate the obvious, but I do think in a webinar like this, there's a lot of opportunity to learn about what's taking place. We started talking about some of the findings in your research about customers and consumers really being willing to make a switch in their banking relationship. Everything we're talking about kind of comes back to this theme of differentiation.
Absolutely.
How do you as a business stand out to consumers who are looking for a new banking relationship? Because there's a ton of people in the digital world that you can find on YouTube, you can go to TikTok, places that, I'm not going to be spending a ton of time, but there's others that will. Influencers are pushing things. You've got declining credit card ownership. You mentioned loyalty programs as something that people are seeking out. Help me understand from the findings that you have and also just your experience, how do community banks take advantage of the interest to change to potentially their bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the really important change that this brings for community bankers, for regional bankers, is this opportunity, to your point, use data to differentiate and to personalize, to engage your customers, right? This is absolutely, I agree. It's about differentiation and it's about customer engagement. How do you pull them in and certainly make them part of the interaction and the activity that's happening right in the banking world? And I think where the value of the API comes to be is that you can, if you have a particular niche type service that you want to provide, and you as a banker feel like you can take on that technology, because that's a key portion of it, right? Is this is really the concept, the opportunity for you to get access to that consumer data and interact with it in another way, right? Via another delivery channel. And I think many of our bankers are in fact doing this, especially in the regional space, but we're seeing it more and more in the community space as our community bankers are finding ways to differentiate themselves as well by partnering with particular solutions or finding ways to really take the data that's available and personalize offerings for their consumers. So there's no doubt that this opportunity to be very open in how you get access to the data creates this, I think, business opportunity for all of us to interact with that data and produce a service or a product that adds more value to you, to your customer, right? It seems very basic, but it really is important, I think, in the banking industry that it's not a one-size-fits-all, right? Everyone is looking for that opportunity to differentiate.
Yeah, and I think that's why we've heard over the last few years how data is the new gold, and you can go to a lot of conferences when they come back in person in the fall, and people will be talking about the value of your data and unlocking your data and making sense of your data. But it's a drum worth beating because, again, we're the canaries in the coal mine. If you're paying attention and you're asking good questions, you're going to get really interesting answers. And I think part of the challenge right now in this digital world is to understand it's not always about the technology. It's about the business experience that you bring, the culture that you have, the organizational discipline that you've got in place to explore new things based on what you think you're seeing and making sense of some things on the margin. And when we talk about being on the margin, there's a real big movement at the moment about financial inclusion because there's a lot of people who have not been able to participate in this financial industry. I think that's changing. I selfishly, again, heck, but for Bank Director, we did a feature. So Killer Mike, some of you might listen to his music. We're talking about Greenwood as one example of a bank that's been stood up recently that's doing some pretty cool things. There's other de novos that are trying to serve this market, but it's not just startups. I would imagine you're seeing from FIS's client base a real interest in providing some new perspectives and opportunities for the underbanked or the unbanked even to do something new. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, financial inclusion is it's been a great topic both for FIS as well as for our banking partners. It's been we've had this great opportunity over the last year to really focus on that within FIS, and I've talked to a lot of our banking partners about what they're doing, and there's actually a very impressive list of things. So we've seen everything from bankers that are taking their tablets out into the communities and working with the underbanked or the unbanked to bring that trust and get those accounts set up by going to them, right? Literally taking the branch out into the community and really be able to work with folks to get into the banking arena. And that's been just awesome to see, and we've seen a tremendous amount of success with that. The other areas that I've seen a lot is financial literacy. All of our bankers are interested in, and we've made programs available too. How do I help people to learn how to budget? How do I help people to understand, that, what the structure of an account is and how it works and how they can influence it? So this whole concept of really financial literacy has been so critical in the overall realm of financial inclusion, and how we've tackled it is certainly we've made a lot of modules available via online banking to be able to do that type of education, and really made those available to our bankers to take out into the communities and help to bring some of those folks into the fold, because I think there is a trust component of not really understanding the banking infrastructure, and our bankers know that, and they want to certainly be able to respond. The other thing we're introducing is kind of a financial wellness program where we can bring via the mobile channel, bring via the online channel, this opportunity to really take the data, take the transactions, understand money coming in, coming out, and really be able to effectively give the consumer insights about how they're using their money and how they potentially would be able to respond, right, to whether it's, again, budgeting or other programs or products that can be available. So I think that I have been just really impressed with some of the unique and different things we have seen in this focus to go after, right? How do I better respond to the banked and the underbanked?
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is really fascinating is this concept of financial health and the way that FIS and not just FIS. There's a lot of people who have recognized there's the physical well-being and health, and we're seeing that with some of these health techs that look like fintechs or fintechs that are in the health sector, where you're trying to make sure that you're living your healthiest you. And you have financial institutions who realize, hey, wait a second, there's two industries that are really fundamental to every American's way of, kind of waking up in the morning, going to bed. You're going to want to make sure you're healthy. You're going to want to check your bank account to know that you have the means to pay your bills.
That's right.
It might sound simplistic, but I think this is one of the newer realizations that have come from the pandemic. And, again, as we're thinking about the future of community banks, strikes me that's an area that more and more institutions can realistically participate. Is that, again, a fair observation?
100% agree. And they are participating. I would tell you that this was this has been a very important topic for us. We've run some recent webinars on this and have had just great response from our banking partners. I think what's hard about financial inclusion is there really isn't a roadmap, right? I can't, I can show you how to bring a mobile banking offering forward. I can show you how to use online banking. It's a little bit harder to help a financial institution to put a plan together around financial inclusion. And so the approach we've really taken is we've tried to provide as many resources as we can around, literacy, around budget planning, around these financial insights, whether it's around credit insights as an example, how you're using your data and bringing some of that forward to financial institutions, because it really, the first question we ask is just what market are you in? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it a particular demographic you're going after? Is it a particular, are you experiencing, whatever the local issues could be around unemployment or other certainly issues that have been more forefront over the just the lack of financial security that many have experienced over these last 15 months or so. So once you understand that about a financial institution, then you can help them really to put that plan together. But I would tell you very much so that it is, I think, an important topic. Whether institutions are CDFIs or not, right? They're still out there really wanting to understand what their community development plan needs to be and how they can give back. It's certainly paramount, especially with their community and regional partners.
Yeah, and so as you're talking, we just got a question about cash usage for it being on the high percentage for the non-banked or even the underbanked. The question, essentially, if I'm reading this right, it believes that cash increased during COVID. Here we were talking about digital currency and mobile and touchless payments, things like that sophisticated technology stuff. But you still have a lot of folks that will use a 5 or a 10 to pay for something. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I will tell you, I think for us within FIS, that particular situation is what really forced us as an organization to jump in on financial inclusion, because what we saw was so many organizations unwilling to accept cash during this time, and a whole population of people that only had cash to use. So if you think about that population, right, that whole group of potential customers for all of us during this time, to your point of only having cash and organizations not willing to accept the cash because of this need to not touch mutual things together, that for us was really the catalyst that made us as an organization stop back and say, okay, we have an opportunity to influence this. What kind of a program can we put in place to help our bankers get out there and really pull those people into the financial infrastructure and allow them to take part in all that we are trying to do. I mean, just think about the huge usage of online grocery shopping as an example, and you don't have a credit card. That's not going to work. So those were the types of, I think, real life experiences that people had during this time that made us as an organization step up and say, we have an opportunity, we have resources that we think we can help our financial institutions respond to this.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've only got a few minutes left, and I'd like to take advantage of the opportunity to do like a little kind of role-playing scenario planning, whatever we want to describe it as, but I want to put a different hat on than me and you just having this conversation. I want to pretend like I'm coming in as a prospective customer, somebody who runs a successful community bank, who's listened to this conversation and says, you know what, I need to do something differently. Maybe I'm already an FIS customer, maybe I'm not. That doesn't matter. It's more around the business logic behind my interests. So I want to create a hyper-personalized experience for my customer. I don't want to just have something that's good. I want something that's great upon great. And I want to do that so that I have an engagement model that I see as recurring. What would you tell me if I give you that challenge?
Yeah, that would be an awesome conversation. Happy to have it. And if any of the customers out there, I'd love to have that conversation. So I will tell you that I think, I'm going to tell you, we have these conversations today with bankers who come in and say, how do I elevate that experience? So some of the things we're talking about certainly are, let's talk about how you're using your branch today. In today's world, we're all focused on, will the branch be here? Won't the branch be here? Well, I'm a very strong believer that I think our branches are going to continue to serve a very strong role in our communities. But how are you using your branch today? Are you able to bring in complementary services? Are you creating an environment perhaps where you can offer some of that financial inclusion? There are some strategies we would employ to talk about with you around, in particular, that branch strategy. The other area I would talk with you about is what do your small businesses need? So we think that there's continues to be an amazing opportunity for small businesses, especially with our, again, community and regional bankers, and what kinds of services are they need, and how can we build some of those services in to really create a very unique offering for you to be able to leverage what's going on in the small business, and really take advantage of what you did with PPP. Those would be a couple of the areas, certainly. And I probably the next question might be is tell me about your ability in the bank to execute on technology, right? Have you thought about building kind of this transformational team? How can we certainly work together to make sure that we can bring the tech to you, and then you have the opportunity to really customize it and push forward?
Well, here's a tell me more moment.
Sure.
So again, I'm the CEO of a bank. I want to accelerate the adoption of new technology, realizing that I have a lot of technology I've already invested in, but I want to do some new things. I want to really be able to take advantage of it. How would you suggest I speed up that process?
Sure. So we've introduced a very different approach to bringing product to market. So I would encourage you to take advantage of it. And we've looked at product enablement in a way that I don't want you to stand in line and have to wait 6 months for delivery of a solution. So what we really have looked at is finding those particular areas that are of interest to bankers and introducing them in a way that I can bring that functionality to many banking partners at once. And that type of a product enablement strategy, I think, would be really critical for our bankers to take advantage of. And it's how do I help you to prepare for that change? So when those opportunities become available, you can take advantage of them and really push forward. I think that that's been an important focus for us and has to be for our bankers as well. It's got to be the technology at the time you need it, not 6 or 8 months later.
So I like everything you're saying, but I want to, final thought as I do my role play. I have a lot of data. I think I understand the data. How do I know that I'm using it wisely? And are there uses that maybe I'm not thinking about that you see other community banks failing to take advantage of?
Sure. So in the area of data, absolutely. I think that it's important for us to understand when you say you think you know your data. Let's analyze that and talk about that. We certainly have seen organizations have differing levels of maturity in how they're looking at the data and what they're doing with it. But we can offer solutions where we can take that data and really customize an approach for you and ensure through those financial insights we talked about that you're actually really out and engaging at an individual customer level with their data via that financial insights. I think that would be certainly a really important element to increase customer engagement.
Gotcha. Well, I asked you to start who is going to take care of business in the NBA playoffs. You already gave me that prediction. So I'm going to ask you to help me close this off by saying if you had a bold prediction for the future, and I want the future not to be way out there. I think the future could be 2 years down the road because we can kind of believe in 24 months we can think about that in more realistic terms. A bold prediction 2 years down the road for community banks.
That's a great question. I would tell you that I think that my bold prediction will be community bankers will be employing programmers. How's that sound? I think we are going to see our community bankers really going out there and understanding the value of technology, understanding how they can really influence it. So I think we're going to see community bankers of all size out there actually looking to say, how do I bring kind of some of that technology into my bank via these very technical skill sets that we're not seeing as much of today. And I think that we'll see that, and it'll be a great opportunity for them to take advantage of some of the things we've talked about today, whether it's APIs, robotics process automation, all of those things. I think that we're going to see a little bit more of a technical acceptance within our bankers.
Well, what's interesting, I worked at a tech company for about 7 years and was around a lot of programmers. And what they, I think, really aspire to do is work on interesting projects.
Absolutely.
And what you're talking about, there's a lot of interesting projects in the banking world. It's, I think, incumbent on banks' leadership team to tell a better story about why we're good employers of really smart technical people, because I wouldn't say anything but I agree. We've got great opportunities to do a lot more, and it starts with the people. But you get the people in place, you get the products going, then I think your financial performance probably will follow suit. So,
absolutely.
This has been a lot of fun, Maria. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. Again, Maria Schuld at FIS, Al Dominick at Bank Director. We really appreciate you spending a little bit of your afternoon with us. As a reminder, you're going to receive a recorded version of this webinar within 24 hours. You can check back in a few days, see if Maria is right about the NBA. Check back in 2 years and see if you're employing a lot of programmers. I think you will be. I appreciate you doing this, Maria, and appreciate, again, everyone who took the time. Thanks.